Welcome. Today we're going to be talking to you about the tools that we have to deploy Alfresco. Sorry? Was it good? So specifically, we're going to build an Alfresco cluster in about 20 minutes, hopefully. To start, I'll give you a quick introduction on who we are. Just give you a quick overview of what the objectives are of the session. Then we're going to do the build and talk about how the deployment works and the architecture and the infrastructure around it. We're going to scale up a cluster, take a 5-node cluster and scale it up to a 10-node cluster. Then we're going to upgrade another cluster to 4.2.3.1. And probably the most important bit is talk about the roadmap of what we're looking at, the tool and the processes, and see if anyone has any feedback or any ideas or feels that this would be a useful tool for us to release or productize or anything else. So that'll be in the Q&A session. So I've just talked about all the objectives, so we can skirt through these. I'm Alex, and I'm the Director of Operations at Alfresco. So I'm in charge overall of most of the technology functions outside of engineering QA. So the DevOps team, IT, some of my colleagues at the back, and the web team. And this is Steve.
Hello. I'm the DevOps manager. My main focus is on all our cloud environments.
He's been with the company for?
Forever.
Employee number?
5 or something.
5. So yeah, anyway, we'll just go over the objectives. One thing I didn't mention earlier is the command node. This is another tool. Oh, just wait for 2 seconds. That's all right. Cool. So just to refresh the objectives of the session, going to build a cluster, talk about the infrastructure and the processes and the tools that we use to do this internally in Alfresco. Then we're going to scale up a cluster and upgrade it and talk about the command node and then get some feedback and roadmap ideas. So what is the deployment portal? So the deployment portal is a system that we use for managing environments. We built this originally about 2 years ago, the first iteration of it for managing cloud, because our cloud product, because when you need to manage multiple servers, you need to keep each server consistent, you need to keep the configuration the same, you need to automate as much as possible in order to move quickly. So that's why we created it. Created internally by the DevOps team, slightly separate from the engineering team because they're focusing on the product. We focus on the tools and the processes that we need to deploy their products. So at the moment we use it for Alfresco Cloud. What we're going to show you here is about Alfresco Enterprise. We use it to deploy Alfresco activity. So the deployment, when we released a new version a couple of weeks ago, that was deployed with the deployment portal. On future offerings, I think you probably saw some in the keynote earlier. They're deployed via a deployment portal, so all the scripts and everything is part of this suite, and infrastructure services as well. So the deployment portal, this deployment portal is deployed via a deployment portal. This is a live demo we're going to switch to. The guy who manages it is at the back of the room. So if he gets his laptop out and starts fixing stuff, then I'll be worrying. So I'm just going to switch over. So this is the deployment portal. It's not sexy. Sorry guys. It's functional. We don't invest time in design and stuff like that because it's an internal tool at the moment. But it's Steve will talk you through the architecture and what all the elements are of it. But basically, for this demo, we've got 3 running environments. One called Upgrade, which we'll be upgrading. We've got the Scale environment, which we'll be scaling up, and Steve's playing with Alfresco 5 in this environment. So there's a 5G. I think it took a few goes to get it to work. So that's 5G. What you can kind of see on this screen is the state of the environment, the configuration that we use. Configuration is the chef code, the chef scripts are bundled together into what we call a configuration. Template is, we pre-can some templates, so if you know you're going to need a production environment with a certain number of nodes, create a template and that will define the number of Alfresco nodes, the number of web nodes, etc. So it's easier and quicker to define it. Later on, when we talk about roadmap, one of the elements that we've got on there as a template designer, so you can pick and choose how many nodes and all the different elements to make it up. Number of nodes, because it's a 10-node cluster, it works out, 5-node cluster, it works out 10 nodes overall when you've got your web tier and your SOLR tier and other bits in there. In order to create the environment, we click on create, and I'm going to try and see as I type it in. Give the environment a name. It's a live demo. The template we're going to use will be medium, so that'll be a couple of Alfresco servers. Configuration, so this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is the configuration of the chef code, the underlying code that builds the system. The build plan, Alfresco Enterprise, so any code that's deployed, that's checked in by the engineers goes into SVN or Git, and then the build system managed by Samuel at the back. Various build plans, the one that we're interested in is Enterprise, but we'll have, how many have we got? Build plans?
Too many.
Too many, probably about 50 or 60. And then the build number, so we're going to deploy, we're not going to deploy 5, we're going to deploy 4.2.3.1, and we're going to include records management and hit create. So this system is now talking to Amazon, and it's creating a read-only policy. I'm not quite sure the individual elements of it, but as you can see down here, this is in an undefined state, so it's waiting for Amazon to report back that it's built the server. If we prove that it's a live demo by going to Amazon and refreshing on the console, you can see that we're requesting from Amazon these servers. So there are a corresponding number of servers there that we're requesting. When Amazon come back and say, here's your server and the details, we'll pick those details up and pass them back into this portal, and we should be able to see it refresh. And that will give us some machine states, so running, stopped, and various different states. Once that happens, then once the server's built, then Chef will kick in and Chef will configure the box dependent on the role. So Alfresco N1 is an Alfresco service. It has a role, so it will need Tomcat, it will need various other elements like Java, and it will need Alfresco. So Alfresco for us is an RPM, so we'll download that RPM and install it, and everything should start up. So hopefully, Phil, things will... Yeah, there we go. That should have refreshed automatically, but for some reason it didn't. But anyway, thanks, Phil. We've now got some servers. We're waiting for this server down here, because with Amazon they don't give you all the servers exactly at the same time. So sometimes you have to wait for them to give you the server. So what we'll do now is switch back to the presentation, because we're not going to watch this screen for 18 minutes because it's a little dull. And if we refresh again, you can see as proof we have instance IDs and machine types. So if I switch back, then somehow. In preparation, we had some screenshots that we didn't have to use. So we'll just pop onto the architecture. Steve?
Yeah, so we have the tool, the UI is written in Angular, and we have RESTful Java backend. It communicates to something we call platform worker and service bus. The service bus picks up messages, they send it to the platform worker. That does the magic in Amazon and provisions all the machines, sets all the security groups, does all the RDS and everything like that. We use some interesting tools to be able to do all these things, plug them all together, and it pulls a variety of information from Yum servers, from Bamboo, which is our build system, from S3, and from GitHub.
Okay, that's fine. So whilst this environment's going to be building in the background, I talked to you earlier about scaling. We're going to scale up an environment. So what do we mean by scaling? Scaling up and scaling down, basically. We'll talk a little bit about why you want to do that, but when we scale up an environment, because we use, in this current configuration, we use S3 and RDS, it means that we maintain all of the data, the data in the database and the data in the file system is in S3. So we can take away a server and persist the data in S3 and RDS. So if we were going to scale up, what we do, we can add a node in any tier at any time. What it does is it goes off to Amazon, will create the new server. It will give that server a tag, which means it will assume a role. That role will be Alfresco, SOLR, web, anything like that. So when it knows it's a web node, it will go and pick up that configuration. Once it's started, we run some checks on it, make sure that it is performing, it's doing everything it needs to do. If it's doing everything it needs to do, we'll add it to a load balancer if it's a web node, or we'll join it into the Alfresco cluster if it's an Alfresco node. To scale down, just as important, we remove it from the cluster, remove it from the load balancer, and then terminate it. So in Amazon with hourly pricing, it's great. You don't pay for it after that. Why do you want to scale? I think most people here, if you're a sysadmin or IT manager or whatever, you need to scale your applications. To have an agile environment means that you're kind of only paying for what you need at the time. You might want to scale up because of load, so whether that be time-based load or just you're growing as a company or whatever, you can, with this tool, we can just add an additional node without having to buy a server or do anything like that. It's pretty quick and easy. You may be growing as a company, you may be growing as a department, or you may just organically grow, so you want to scale up. We kind of look at it as 4 different types of scaling. You've got manual scaling, where you just go in and create a new node. Automatic scaling, so based on thresholds in your monitoring. If load goes over a certain amount, you might want to spin up another web node or spin up another Alfresco node. Time-based scaling, if you're a global company and you have a lot of employees in America, you may want to think, well, half an hour before they come online, let's bring some more servers up, and then when they go offline, switch them off again. And the last one, I called it a kind of triggered scaling. So if you had a load of batch jobs that run at a certain time or part of a batch process, you may want to bring up some nodes. Or if for us, if we hooked it into the build system, it may be that the build system finishes, you get a green build out of it. That runs some postscripts. One of them could be to build an environment or to scale up an environment if it was a cluster test, for example. So I've gone too far. To show that all that's possible, if we pop back to the deployment portal and refresh it, just to show you that everything is running. These are now in a state called Chef. This means that Chef is running on those servers. It sometimes takes a couple of goes with Chef to run through and deploy everything. Tom will give me a good reason why. Once that's done, that server's in the state where it can then start up Alfresco, for example, or the web tier. That'll happen in about 5 minutes. But we're going to go and scale this environment that we can see at the moment has 5 Alfresco nodes and 5 web nodes. So what we're going to do is scale up and scale down, which you can do at the same time. We're going to scale down to 5 nodes, 2 nodes on the web and up to 10 nodes. And hopefully, you can see here we've now got a whole load more nodes, and nodes 6 to 9, 6 to 10, 10's at the top. They're being built at the moment, so we've made a call to Amazon. If you look down at the web, down the bottom, you can see that 2 of these servers we're shutting down. So they've been removed from the load balancer or the HA proxy configuration, so we're not going to be passing information between them. They're being shut down at the moment, so in 20 seconds we won't have those anymore. They won't exist. And back to Steve for upgrading.
Hello. There we go. Okay, so the upgrading process we needed for Alfresco Cloud, so we've taken that and put that into the enterprise deployment portal. We have 2 types of upgrading, and these can be either deploying a new Alfresco version or some new configuration. Both of them are perfectly valid for upgrading. We'll demo upgrading Alfresco in a minute. We have a rolling upgrade, which is a zero downtime upgrade. This is used when there's no schema changes, when there's no database changes. Could be used for when you deploy hotfix, for example. There are a variety of steps. The first one is that we start a new node on each tier, which is the canary node. We run some tests on that to make sure the version of Alfresco deploying works. If those pass, then we terminate the first nodes in each tier and rebuild them with a new version. And we carry on going through each node in each tier until we've finished. We have the ability to pause, so if something goes a bit wrong, you can pause your deployment and investigate to find out what's going on, and you can roll back as well. So if something goes horrendously wrong, you can roll back to the version that you were running before you started the upgrade. And then we have a downtime upgrade, which is where there are schema changes, where it's not safe to run two different versions of Alfresco at the same time. So for this, we put the system into maintenance mode, so we can display a maintenance page to the users. We then terminate all the nodes. We make sure all the data is kept, so S3 and RDS are maintained, and all the security groups and everything are maintained. And then we bring up a new set of machines with a new Alfresco version. That normally takes about 15 minutes to do that.
So if we pop back to the portal now, we've got a scaling environment. No, we haven't. We've got an upgrade environment here. So just one part about the portal. If an environment is having an action performed on it, it goes into a pending state. That means we can kind of differentiate if you had 15, 20, 30 environments running, which we sometimes do. It's just a way of differentiating which environments are in which state. So we take the upgrade environment. You can see here that we're on 4.2.2, build 51. And what we want to do is upgrade it to 4.2.3.1, build 54. I'd like to upgrade it to Alfresco 5, but I'm not sure it's been tested, so we'll just stick with this one for now. Which one? Rolling?
Yeah, rolling. Try rolling.
We'll do a rolling upgrade. So what you can see is, as Steve mentioned, we have a canary node now. This is the node that we're going to create, deploy Alfresco to it, the new version of Alfresco, make sure that it works, run some tests against it. When that one's up, and we've done the testing on it, it then gets trashed.
No, we trash the node ones.
Yeah, and then it will go through node by node. So it won't do all the nodes at the same time. So if you had 5 nodes in the cluster, it will just take one out and upgrade the one, and then just move through. So this would take about an hour. Potentially. About an hour to do.
I think on our cloud version, it takes about 3 hours, primarily because of the SOLR restoration processes. Yeah. One thing we have that means that the users don't get any impact is some session replication in Tomcat. So if a user is using the node that gets terminated underneath them, they just roll over to another Tomcat.
So I'm going to refresh it, because it should auto-refresh, shouldn't it, Phil? But it's not at the moment. You can see here that that environment is now running, and it's, so we've been given that server. The live environment, the one that we created earlier, if we look here, we're now, I'm just going to come around because I can't see. All the servers are built, and the first node is in a state called start A. So the first node, node 1, is the first one that gets built, and then Alfresco starts on it. So anyone who's deployed Alfresco knows that you have to, when you start it up, that node is the one that builds the database and applies the schema or does the upgrade or whatever. So that's the one we bring up first. Once it's been built, then the other nodes will carry on. They'll come out of sleep mode, and then they'll start up as well. So SOLR's in sleep at the moment, and it'll keep checking on the state of the first node, and then it will carry on from there. So back to the upgrade one, and it's now in chef mode. So chef is deploying Tomcat and everything like I explained earlier. So if we pop back to the presentation, one thing I mentioned in the objectives is the command node. You might have seen, probably not because it's a bit fuzzy, but we have this node called the command node. The command node It's a single node that we deploy with the majority of environments. We deploy this node because you don't want to log on to 10 servers or 5 Alfresco servers or whatever. You don't want to go and fetch a log file from each server if there's an issue. It's a central place that you can go to collect log files, to analyze the logs and the metrics and everything like that in one place. And you can also use a tool that we've deployed called SALT that we use for orchestration. So basically, you can fire commands from one location to multiple nodes. So the command node is the SALT master. Yeah. And everything else is a minion. Yeah. Cool. So central point of access for monitoring, we have Nagios checks and Sensu for the monitoring side. Log collection and analysis, we use Logstash, Elasticsearch, and Kibana. For that, orchestration is via SALT. Metric visualization with Graphite and Grafana. Why do we create it? Ease of management, basically. Ease of management of multiple servers. Simplicity, speed to make changes. So speed to make changes to multiple servers. Speed because that's the node you go to if there's an issue in the environment, because most stuff should be collected into that area. It's used to persist information because, as you can see, we don't care about the servers because we just terminate them. You don't want to terminate a server but beforehand think, do I need to get the log files, do I need to get any information? If anyone here has worked with Amazon before, you'll realise that they take servers away from you without telling you they'll die or whatever. So you don't want to leave anything sensitive on a server. So we use this as an area to persist that information. It's also good from a security perspective for various reasons. If you ship your logs off the server, if that server gets hacked, then a hacker could kind of delete the logs and delete any presence they've been there. But if you've logged it off to another server, then you should get that traceability on the other server. Preservation of log files, as I just mentioned. So another potential use case in the future is you don't necessarily have to give access to a developer or a QA engineer to the individual servers. You give them access to this so they can see the logs, they can see the metrics and everything like that without having the ability to do damage to your servers and your infrastructure. If anyone doesn't know Kibana, this is a view of it. This is like the default view that we've created. You get your events over time across the top, and you can see that we've grouped it by document type, so chef, HA proxy. These are all the different log messages that are coming in from the different sources. Really bad slide, but these are the messages. It's not particularly useful in this view unless you're delving down to the actual individual error, for example. One that I've picked out here is relevant to an upgrade or deployment of Alfresco because there's a line that says the message that came from Alfresco is no changes were made to the schema. So that was like a startup message. This is Grafana, which is the visualization of your metrics. It's built by the same people as Kibana, so that's why it kind of looks similar. SALT is the orchestration tool that we just mentioned. This is an example of what would happen if you created a new environment or added a new node to your cluster or took it away. It would be telling the master that it's available to have commands. So we accept the keys from all those minions, and that means we can then run commands. Example, pinging all the nodes, and they come back as true. One really useful thing about it, example here, is that you can run commands against those nodes from a central location. You can wildcard it. You can just send it to everything or be quite specific. So this example here is checking the Tomcat status on an Alfresco node, and it returns back what you'd see if you SSH'd into that server itself. A real life example, since I wrote this demo for San Francisco, we had the bash vulnerability, so we could have mentioned that one, but this was the SSL vulnerability from a couple of months ago. So run this command, it checks the version of SSL on any Alfresco node 1 and 2. To find out more about monitoring and the Logstash Elasticsearch, there's a guy here called Miguel who's doing a talk tomorrow on monitoring your Alfresco installation tomorrow at 9:40, meeting rooms 4 to 6.
Thank you.
That's all right, I don't have to talk about it because you are, that's good. just before we move on to roadmap and kind of feedback, we're just going to pop back just to make sure, or just to see if any of our environments have completed. None of them have. Phil. We're almost there. We're literally, that was just completed. So we're literally about 30 seconds away from being able to prove that it was actually real. So we'll just start talking about roadmap and then we'll come back for the final proof. So what we didn't really mention at the beginning, and I talked way too much about it early on in San Francisco, and I didn't want to talk too much early on, is why we built this tool and how you guys who are here can help us out a bit. This is an internal tool, and we've used it for cloud and activity and everything like that. But because it shares so many common components with Alfresco Enterprise, we want to know whether it's worth us releasing this as a product or releasing it open source or what, or releasing it as a service to partners or whoever. So we'll do a bit of Q&A in a bit, but just to let you know what's on our roadmap. Security at the moment, it's an internal tool. It's pretty basic security on it, but we have a tenancy model in there at the moment, because even in Alfresco, when we release it within Alfresco, we don't necessarily want everyone in the organization to be able to access environments created. For example, a support engineer could be creating an environment for a customer issue. We wouldn't necessarily want people in other regions or other departments being able to access that environment, or it could have other sensitive information in it. From a billing perspective, there's functionality in there where you can apply different AWS accounts to different departments and tenants. So you can share your billing without having to put too much effort in there. So from a security perspective, we have a tenancy model. There's a lot more we could do with it. SAML integration, for example, is an easy one to mention whenever you talk about security. Additional infrastructure support. At the moment, we're only using this in Amazon, but with the libraries that we've used, it won't take long to be able to support other cloud vendors and other infrastructure. So even on-premise, VMware, there's APIs in most of these products now, so it should be relatively easy to do. You can see there we deployed records management. So that actually took the Alfresco war and the records management amped it in, if that's a term.
Technical term.
It's a technical term. So it would be nice if there would be a way for you to be able to select the AMP, more and more AMPs. We wouldn't necessarily want to have like a tick box for every single thing, but we'll come up with an intelligent way of having an AMP store. So you could either pick ones that we've provided, pick community provided, ones from add-ons, for example, or your own custom AMPs and inject them in. Customization of parameters. So at the moment, you can see from there, it's pretty locked down, but we need to expose the global properties and any other custom parameter that you might want to adjust, because there's no point. Well, it wouldn't be particularly useful if we locked everything down to one configuration, so the ability to do that. Additional service support at the moment, as I mentioned, this is RDS and S3 only. We have another deployment which uses local MySQL and a local file store on there, but ability to choose database, choose operating system and everything like that. At Alfresco, we support and QA on a lot of different databases, operating systems and combinations. So for us, it would be useful even to be able to have that ability, let alone for customers and partners. And a lot advanced APIs. We have some APIs in there, and over time we're adding more and more and more, but there's probably a lot more we could do. And more granular control. So from a user perspective, you may want to have people who can view what is in an environment, view logs, not necessarily upgrade it. You may want to give your level 1 support the ability to restart a node, but not necessarily upgrade it and stuff like that. So we don't have that ability yet, but it's coming. Now, hopefully, if we pop back and do one more refresh.
It's complete.
Oh, you did it.
You got URL.
Look at that. This is our live environment and our live demo environment. Yay!
Always takes some time to start.
Yeah, there it is. Cool. Okay, so that worked. Oh, wow. We've got about 5, 6, 7 minutes left, so want to get some feedback from you guys. Before we start on the Q&A, is there anyone here who's not Alfresco, but partners, customers, etc., who feel that this would be useful, either conceptually or as a product or anything? So, anyone? There's a few. Raise of hands if people think, yeah, sorry. Cool, okay. Who's got questions?
Can you deploy the Alfresco transformation server using this thing? It is Windows-based.
We talked about this one.
Potentially
Yeah.
we could, yeah.
So the question was, can you deploy the transformation server? That's the Office transformation. So this is Linux-based at the moment. Chef works on Windows. You can automate on Windows. You can do it. It's trickier. One of the advantages of using the Amazon world is you can pre-bake the AMI. So you could just say, create an AMI, and then just inject some basic config in there. So yeah, it's all perfectly doable.
Yeah, it wouldn't be difficult.
No. Yeah, you first.
You showed it in the beginning, I missed the start of it, but is it possible to manage multiple environments except production environments?
So the question is, can you manage multiple environments? I think I'll try and answer the question.
Continuous integration environments.
Yeah, so multiple environments, they'll all show up in the list of your environments. And you can, if I was to bring it up, I'm not going to bring it up, but one of the kind of sister environment to this, which is built by Thibaut at the back. That's the one that we do for managing the new services and activity and stuff like that. We built a concept of what we call deployed environments. So those are environments that we apply a level of protection to, so you can't, the standard user wouldn't be able to see them. But within that, in the normal kind of view that you saw then, we do have the CI environment. That is in there, and the QA environment and the staging environment, they're all in there. So you can have that concept, definitely.
Yeah, you can create as many nodes as Amazon will let you.
Yeah. For that.
But how do you link the web node to the correct Alfresco node?
Oh, the tool does that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to pop back. Here, each, if I view the stacks, each of these is an environment, so that's 4 lines of an environment. These environments are segregated in their own security groups, so they can't intercommunicate. So you can do that. I mean, you can do, but basically you can do, it's endless what you can do with it, but what we've done is we have segregated them. So if I took this live environment, we just saw all these nodes in here are segregated from the Alfresco nodes in the other environment. But if you're to do it on-prem, you could do the same thing with VMware or firewall rules or whatever. So, yeah, this gentleman at the back.
When we see the nodes here, where does the database live or the load balancer?
Okay, so the question is, we can see the nodes, but we can't see the other information. Can you see it here? No. In the other one, there's a button where you can see it's listed out the RDS instance, database name, the S3 bucket details. There are security groups, there are ELBs, there is Elasticache. There's quite a lot of... Phil?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, for this one, they're all sharing an RDS instance at the moment, but they're creating separate schemas or users in there for each stack.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had the functionality, which we haven't really used yet, to be able to actually create a new RDS instance.
Yeah. So if you didn't use RDS, for example, another node in the template would be the database, for example. If you were to deploy a MySQL cluster or something like that, you can deploy that. I think I mentioned on one slide infrastructure services. As time goes by, we're adding more and more of our own internal infrastructure that support cloud and support activity and everything like that. We add them in here as well because the configuration is known, because everything is in. I've got to say one thing, infrastructure as code, sorry, just for Tom. But basically every node that we build is built with Chef. So therefore, there's the opportunity for us to actually put it into a portal like this and upgrade it and everything like that. Especially useful in the Amazon world where they do take stuff away from you. Any more questions? Yeah.
What method have you used for discovering nodes for share clustering?
So questions, what method do we use for something to do with share clustering? Yeah. Discovering nodes for share clustering.
So the repo tier talks into the database and discovers via the database. Share uses the Hazelcast AWS plugin. Yeah, tags and security groups, and in each environment has a separate username and password as well. So there's no chance of cluster overlap.
And you're backing the Tomcat session replication with Elasticache.
Yes.
Are there tags? Can we see tags or not?
If you click on node.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's really bad to do this in such a. There we go. There's some tags. Any more questions? Oh, yeah.
RabbitMQ integration. You said you mentioned you use RabbitMQ.
Yeah, so questions about RabbitMQ. That's RabbitMQ for the portal. It's not part of the, not for the actual deployed product. So basically, the front end talks to the Java application, which has. Phil, do you want to answer the question about RabbitMQ?
We have the, as you said, the UI is in Angular, and that's where all of the user state is. That's talking to the REST web services in Java, which then puts a message on RabbitMQ, and then the platform worker, which is like our standalone job, basically reads the information from the RabbitMQ, does the Amazon calls, and returns any information back over the queue.
So both Rabbit's essentially a standalone thing. It's not accessible elsewhere.
No, it's just purely for deployment.
There's one advantage that comes out of that inadvertently, which is the platform worker continually checks the state of the nodes that it knows about in Amazon that it has an interest in. And if the state changes in Amazon, it can feed that information back. So what we have a concept in one of the other portals of a stack watcher, or it's basically, it knows about the template, and then if a node disappears, it goes, oh, I need 5, and I've just lost one, so I'll go and build another one. So that's pretty useful.
Yeah, our back-end services can provision spot instances, and if you lose a spot, you can then perform an action, so you can fix your environment, which will provision you a new node to replace the one that you've lost.
Yeah, and then in our future services bucket that I put, some of those environments can have 20, 30, 35 servers. So in order to keep costs down for us, we use spots where possible. But Amazon sometimes take a while to provision the spot request. So if you can't get a spot, then it can do a premium, like an on-demand as well. So you can have a mixed environment as well, which is quite useful.
Do you require a Chef server, or does it work as a service?
We use Chef Solo at the moment.
I'm not sure I'm going to allow you to ask a question, Phil. Go on then. Is it safe? Good.
Yeah. I mean, so this is going to be made available potentially to customers at some stage. Is there going to be capability in the example to manage the licenses and the size of the content store and things like this, so you can set up those things?
Yeah. So questions like, can you manage licenses and everything like that? Yes. It's on the roadmap, probably there's like V5 or 6 or something like that. But where I had kind of managing of parameters, that kind of comes in there, because anything you can change in Alfresco through configuration and through files and stuff like that, we would eventually make available over time. Yes?
For a hypothetical on-prem version, what sort of entitlements would you need for the process? Like, would you need root access?
So, questions for an on-prem one, what would you need to do? So, when I asked the question in San Francisco, I actually asked who here uses AWS and who here would be kind of on-prem VMware world or physical server world. You have show of hands for who here uses AWS as a customer? So a few. It was slightly more in the American one. That that's all part of our kind of producty discussions, because the easiest thing from for our point of view would be to run it and you just give us keys, IAM keys or whatever, and then we would access in. You would then be in charge of your own billing. You could cut us off whenever you wanted, for example. There's a lot of customers who that wouldn't suit. All of this could run on one box. The RabbitMQ and every other component could run on one box. So we're talking about that at the moment. Would it be achievable for us to kind of release that as an appliance, or the configuration to install it all, and then you could just point it at your VMware server or whatever you have internally? So
I guess the challenge is that a lot of it, like large enterprises with more stringent security requirements, like you might have access to the one box, but that doesn't give you global access across all the other hosts. And if you were saying, let's give a username that global access, that's all the keys to the kingdom, which would be a product management discussion. Yes.
So we wouldn't be able to solve. People in Alfresco knows you can install it, configure it, and maintain it in quite a few different ways. We wouldn't be able to service all of those. So we're trying to pick off the biggies, the ones that are going to service the most amount of people in this. So if just before we finish with questions, if you are interested, you want to help, you want to give us feedback or whatever, come see me, Steve, others. If you want some real technical information on how it all hangs together, Phil at the back will be in the bar later. He'll be able to help out. So any more questions before we move to wrap it up? Nope. Cool. Again, if you want to ask a question later, then me and Steve are around and everyone else in the team. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.